Alright guys, today I'm going to be ranking the Spider-Man movies. Starting off down at the bottom, my number 8 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This movie is a mess, but it has its moments. First off, most of the acting is pretty good. Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone are both great.
I just don't want it to be complicated.
I was just saying that to someone I hate complicated.
Keep it simple.
Okay, great, yeah, all right. But I mean, if we're gonna be friends, I think we gotta establish some ground rules.
Some ground rules?
Yeah, some ground rules. Like that.
Like what?
That laugh. That's off the table.
My laugh is off the table?
You gotta figure out a more annoying laugh. That's still adorable.
That's not adorable. That's adorable.
Sally Field is good, and Dane DeHaan does the best he can with what he's given. Like the first Amazing Spider-Man, the cinematography is solid, especially when the camera is following Spidey as he swings.
Good morning, New Yorkers. Looking for another beautiful day here in the city. Blue clouds to start us off.
The steady increase in sightings of Spider-Man has...
The action is well shot, well edited, and fairly easy to follow. I also like the character design for Electro and Hobgoblin. I mean, sure, they probably could have been better, but I like that they did something different. Finally, say what you will about this movie. I've said plenty, and I will continue to do so. Gwen's death is legitimately heartbreaking. It carries some serious emotional weight.
Gwen! No, please, please. Please.
On to the negatives. Where to begin? Well, the pacing is way off. This movie somehow feels both rushed and drawn out at the same time. This is at least partially because the movie makes some of the same mistakes Spider-Man 3 made, trying to balance too many villains and too many plot threads without properly developing any of them. So, Harry Osborn returns after being gone for 8 years or so, and because he wasn't around in the first movie, they added a couple extra scenes with him and Peter to attempt to give us a baseline for their friendship before Harry goes off the deep end. And to be fair, Garfield and DeHaan do at least have some chemistry, but it just feels rushed. Rhino is defeated, humiliated, and arrested in the opening scene.
I'll take that. That's not yours.
Huh? This is not it, Spider!
Then fucks off until the last 5 minutes when he comes back for the cliffhanger ending.
Let's go! Move it!
Speaking of which, fuck this movie's ending. That shot of Spidey whipping the manhole cover around was the best part of the trailers. And it's literally the last shot in the movie before the credits roll. And finally, like Independence Day Resurgence, this movie put too much effort into setting up future spin-offs and sequels, and not enough effort into being its own movie and telling its own story. And it shows. At the end of the day, this movie isn't good, but I don't know, it's okay. It's not completely awful. My score is 2.5 out of 5. Moving on up, my number 7 is Spider-Man 3. Now, unlike The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I actually consider this one to be a good movie. It's not great, but it's pretty good. Starting off with the positives, most of the action in this movie is better than most of the action in Spider-Man 1 and 2. That's one thing I love about all three of these movies. They all have great action.
Came.
Looks like just in the nick of time.
A couple minutes ago wouldn't have been so bad either.
What are you gonna do?
I may need some help over here. I'm a little busy right now. Give me your hand.
And most of the acting is great. Tobey Maguire, Thomas Hayden Church, James Franco, Rosemary Harris, and J.K. Simmons are all great. And Kirsten Dunst isn't that good, but she gives her best performance in the trilogy, for whatever that's worth. Christopher Young's musical score is also really good. Sometimes it channels the scores from the first two movies, but for the most part, it does its own thing, and it stands on its own pretty well. And I love that this movie didn't pull its punches. Harry's death was heartbreaking. It felt earned, and it hit pretty hard. Like the first two movies, mostly Spider-Man 2, this one continues setting up Dr. Connors so that he could become the Lizard in Spider-Man 4. And personally, I would have loved to see that. Despite the retconning, I like the emotional payoff between Peter and Sandman about Uncle Ben's death. It's a touching scene, and both actors play it perfectly.
But I had no choice.
We always have a choice. You had a choice when you killed my uncle.
My daughter was dying. I needed money. I was scared. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want you to understand.
I've done terrible things too.
didn't choose to be this. The only thing left to me now is my daughter.
I forgive you.
And finally, this is hands down Bruce Campbell's best cameo in the trilogy. The whole scene with him is just hilarious.
Hi, Pete.
Hi.
On the other hand, like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, this movie tried to juggle too many villains and too many subplots, and it buckled under all that weight. Apparently, Sam Raimi had always intended to have 3 villains, but instead I think he wanted to have Vulture, which would have been cool. Unfortunately, studio interference happened, and Raimi was forced to replace a character he wanted with a character he didn't. And the movie suffered for it. Finally, there are some really dumb moments scattered throughout the movie. Ever since Spider-Man 2, Harry knows Peter is Spider-Man, and he wants to ruin his life because, well, he thinks Peter killed his father. So Harry has Mary Jane break up with Peter and tell him she's in love with someone else. Now, we see Harry watching them from afar with binoculars, but he's too far away to hear what they're saying, and he's not wearing an earpiece, suggesting that he did not plant a bug on Mary Jane so he could listen in. So we know he can't hear what they're saying. So, why didn't Mary Jane just take advantage of that and tell Peter what was really going on? Like, the only explanation is that she didn't know how close he was or how far away he was, but even that's a little iffy. There's another scene where Harry attacks Peter in an alleyway. And during the fight, Peter drops the engagement ring he was going to give Mary Jane. And somehow, he is able to catch it before it hits the ground, even though too much time had passed for that to be possible. Because, you know, gravity and shit like that. Overall, I think Spider-Man 3 is a pretty good movie, honestly. Not great, but it's good. My score is 3.25 out of 5. This is where I start to get a little controversial. Don't say I didn't warn you. My number 6 is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Starting off with the good stuff. Like the other 2 movies, most of the acting is solid. Maguire, Franco, Harris, and Simmons all deliver solid performances, and Willem Dafoe is wonderful as Green Goblin. He's definitely hamming it up, but it fits the tone of the movie.
Spider-Man! This is why only fools are heroes. Because you never know when some lunatic will come along with the sadistic choice.
I might be in the minority here. I've always preferred the organic web shooters over the homemade external ones from the comics. It just makes more sense to me, because like if it's an external one, it can get knocked off and then he's disarmed. With the organic ones, he always has them. The action is well shot, well edited, easy to follow, and the effects are almost all practical. So it looks great. And finally, Danny Elfman's musical score for this movie, in my opinion, is one of his best. My one mixed aspect for this movie is Kirsten Dunst. I don't think she's necessarily awful. She's just not that good. She's okay. Moving on to the bad stuff. There are some things about this movie that don't hold up very well. For one, there are some amateur-level continuity errors, like this one from the funeral scene.
Only a friend? Peter Parker?
That's all I have to give.
And also, as much as I like Willem Dafoe's Goblin, his performance is a little too over the top. He was dialed up to 11. I think he needed to be at like a 10 or maybe a 9. Spider-Man is not perfect by any means, but it's one of the better superhero origin movies. My score is 3.9 out of 5. My number 5 is The Amazing Spider-Man. This was a tough decision, but I do consider this to be the better Peter Parker Spidey origin story. As far as acting goes, Tobey Maguire is the better Peter Parker, but Andrew Garfield is the better Spider-Man. He has the quippy sense of humor down perfectly.
Just let me go.
Is that a knife? Is that a real knife?
Yes, it's a real knife.
My weakness, it's small knives.
Just let me go.
Anything but knives! Oh, it's so simple. That was cool, man.
What the hell is this?
Webbing that I developed myself. I don't think you really want to know.
Come on, let me go.
One second.
Knock it off, man. No. Come on, let me go. Stop it. Dude, that isn't funny.
It is kind of funny,
man.
And his Peter is pretty good too. Emma Stone is great. She and Andrew have a ton of chemistry. They are adorable together.
I wish I could just... I can't. It's hard to say.
Just say.
I know.
Say. Why? What? What?
I'm not going to say that name for fear of butchering it. This guy, he is really good as Kurt Connors. Lizard is a solid villain.
Nowhere to hide, Peter.
And finally, I think that Chris Zilka gives us the best portrayal of Flash in any of these movies.
Hey, Parker.
Not today, Flash.
Hey, come on, man. I just want to talk.
Feels better, right? Look, your uncle died. I'm sorry. I get it. I'm sorry. Okay.
The action is awesome. It's well shot and it's a lot of fun. I absolutely love the scene. Earlier in the film, Peter had been saving people on a bridge, and two of them were this dad and his kid. And later, the dad, who turned out to be a crane operator, when Spider-Man needed help, he called his buddies and said, "Put your cranes over the street. He needs help to get to that building." It's fucking awesome. It's probably the best part of the movie. On the other hand, this movie does borrow quite a few plot points from the original Sam Raimi film. And Lizard is a solid villain. His CGI looks great, but the design could have been better. The face just looks too human. I think they should have made his face a little more animalistic, but maybe it's just me. This is a solid superhero movie. I highly recommend it. My score is 4 out of 5. Now on to the top half. My number 4 is Spider-Man Homecoming. This movie was a breath of fresh air for the franchise. Unlike Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's first movies, this one isn't an origin story, and it's better for it, because no one wanted a third Peter Parker origin story in 15 years. Sorry, I should rephrase that. No one in their right mind wanted that. Tobey Maguire was great as Peter Parker and good as Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield was great as Spider-Man and good as Peter Parker. Tom Holland is equally great as both. He captures Peter's awkwardness and Spider-Man's quippiness equally well. Michael Keaton is fantastic as Vulture, makes a great villain, I absolutely love him. Zendaya and Jake Batalon are both great.
What are you doing here? There's a dance.
I'm looking at porn.
Most of the action is solid, and there are some great character moments. The scene in the car on the way to Homecoming is truly masterful. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, well, I actually didn't go up. I saw it off on the ground. Very lucky that he was there that day.
Good old Spider-Man.
Dad, light.
I also love this bit with Peter and Tony.
Okay, it's not working out. I'm gonna need the suit back.
For how long?
Forever. Yeah, that's how it
No,
works.
please, Mr.
Let's
Stark,
have it.
you don't understand. This is all I have. I'm nothing without this suit.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it, okay? God, I sound like my dad.
And finally, the musical score is really good. There's a bit where it does like a callback to the classic Spider-Man theme. And then it also does its own thing. So, good blend. I have a couple problems with this movie. For one, the fight on the plane uses too many quick cuts. It's not awful, but I wish it had been better. Once they get to the ground, it's fine. But when they're in the air, editing definitely could have been better. And there are a few minor plot conveniences, but none of them that really stood out. This is a great movie. I absolutely love this movie. It's one of the most entertaining movies in the MCU. My score for this one is 4.5 out of 5. Now, my number 2 and number 3 are literally neck and neck. They've gone back and forth multiple times, but this is my current ranking, so this is what I'm going to go with. My number 3 is Spider-Man Far From Home. The cinematography and directing are both great. I would say slightly better than in Homecoming. The writing is just as good, and the villain is just as great, if not better. Jake Gyllenhaal was perfect casting for Mysterio. He does a fantastic job portraying both sides of the character.
For the next Tony Stark, I trust you.
What?
Mr. Stark left me a message with those glasses. For the next Tony Stark, I trust you.
I'm still not following. How many lemonades have you had?
He knew every mistake I ever made, okay? So he must have known that I was not ready for something like this.
Why would he give it to you?
Because maybe he didn't trust me to have Edith, he just trusted me to pick who should. It makes so much more sense. He always knew I would do what's right, and he's not going to give them to Fury because Fury would just give himself Edith.
You're probably right about that.
See, that wasn't so hard.
Somebody get this stupid costume off me!
Tom Holland and Zendaya are great. They have a lot of chemistry, and their interactions are perfectly believably awkward.
I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, me too.
To see the city a little bit.
You know, they used to execute people on this bridge. They would, like, put them in a basket and they would drown in the water. Sorry.
It's okay. Like, there's this thing that I've been wanting to talk to you about for a while.
The action is solid. I would say the best action in this movie is not quite as good as the best action in Homecoming, but the worst action in this movie is better than the worst action in Homecoming. So, like that. Like, they have the same average. Homecoming just has the higher high and the lower low. I love Mysterio's illusions, especially when he's tormenting Peter. That whole sequence is just so much anxiety there, man. And finally, oh my god, that cameo at the end. Yes, just yes. I cannot wait for the third movie. I do have a couple small problems here. Like in Homecoming, there are a handful of plot conveniences, nothing really worth mentioning, but there's some little ones. And I love Mysterio. However, he's another villain created by Tony Stark's mistakes. I think he's the sixth one we've gotten. Correct me if I'm wrong. Ironmonger, Whiplash, Killian, Ultron, Vulture, and then Mysterio. It's not bad, I just wish it had been different. My score for this one is 4.75 out of 5. My number 2 is Spider-Man 2. Honestly, the only reason I prefer this one over Far From Home is nostalgia. Without that, they're dead even. But nostalgia brings this one up just the tiniest bit. Tobey Maguire may be the weakest Spider-Man. Not bad, just the least good. But he's probably the best Peter Parker. He absolutely nails that awkward dorkiness. Rosemary Harris is hands down the best Aunt May. Alfred Molina makes Doc Ock one of the best and most relatable villains in these movies.
Where is she?
Oh, she'll be just fine. Let's talk.
And J.K. Simmons once again gives us the most faithful portrayal of any comic book character to date.
Chief, I found Parker.
Where you been? Looking for you all morning. Why don't you pay your phone bill? Mad scientist goes berserk and we don't have pictures.
I heard Spider-Man was there.
Where were you? Photographing squirrels? You're fired.
Chief, the planetarium party.
Oh, right. You're unfired. I need you. Come here. What do you know about high society?
Oh, well,
Don't answer that. My society photographer got hit in the head by a polo ball. You're all I got. Big party for an American hero. My son, the astronaut.
But could you pay me in advance?
You serious? Pay you for what? Standing there? The planetarium tomorrow night, 8 o'clock.
Deadpool, J. Jonah Jameson. And also, this bit from the extended cut is absolutely priceless.
Where have you gone to, Spider?
The writing is great. The continuity is much better than the first movie. There weren't any continuity errors that I noticed. The action is top-notch, especially the train fight. and Danny Elfman's musical score is arguably better than his score from the first movie. My one mixed aspect with this movie is Kirsten Dunst. Like I said before, she's not good, she's not bad, she's just in between. And my one negative is something that I forgot to mention in Spider-Man 3. The fact that once Harry finds out that Peter is Spider-Man, why doesn't Peter just tell him your father killed himself? I don't get it. Why didn't he just tell him? Like, yeah, Harry probably wouldn't believe it, but at least you tried. It's a little annoying. This is a great movie. I love it. It is one of Sam Raimi's best. My score is 4.8 out of 5. Finally, and obviously, my number one is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This film understands the comic book medium and how to translate it onto the big screen better than any other comic book movie so far. The cast is solid across the board.
You know, with great ability comes great accountability.
That's not even how the saying goes,
Man, I
Dad.
do like his cereal, though. I mean, I'll give him that.
I'd say it's nice to see you again, Spider-Man, but it's not.
Hey, Kingpin. How's business?
Booming!
Nice. Ah, that's a no-no.
Nicolas Cage is definitely the standout here.
Wherever I go, the wind follows. And the wind, it smells like rain. My name is Peter Parker.
I was bitten by a radioactive spider.
It's 1933, and I'm a private eye. I like to drink egg creams, and I like to fight Nazis. A lot. Sometimes I let matches burn down to my fingertips just to feel something, anything. Oh. This is purple.
Now.
Blue?
Now.
This is a pretty hardcore origin story.
We're the Spider gang.
Would you mind taking this outside?
We don't pick the ballroom, we just dance. I'm taking this cube thing with me. I don't understand it, but I will.
If we don't get a Nick Cage Spider-Man noir movie that is PG-13, if not R, I will be pissed. The action is well edited, energetic, and fun. The writing is top-notch, and the musical score is great. The animation is beautiful. They do a great job of blending several different styles together. I love all the little details, like how in this universe Edgar Wright made From Dusk Till Dawn instead of Shaun of the Dead.
What did you say your name was?
Dr. Olivia Octavius.
Can I assume that your friends call you Doc Ock?
My friends actually call me Liv.
My enemies call me Doc Ock.
Cute place. Real homey.
Oh, great. It's Liv.
And my personal favorite detail is something I didn't even notice until someone pointed it out to me, and now I notice it, that Miles starts out animated at 12 frames per second, while the rest of the movie is 24 frames per second, which is standard rate for movies. He seems a little slower and clunkier, and then as the movie goes on and he gets better and he kind of grows and like eases into his powers and all that, his frame rate goes up until finally it matches the 24 frames per second of everything else. I think that hits when he does the leap of faith.
What's up, Danger?
I see this spark in you. It's amazing. Whatever you choose to do with it, you'll be great. Best of all of us, Miles. You're on your way.
When do I know I'm Spider-Man? You won't. That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith. Like, what's up, Danger? Like, what's up, Danger? Like, what's up, Danger? Like, what's up, Danger?
Made them myself. They fit perfectly.
Can't stop me now. Travel 200 miles, I'm knocking at your door. And I don't really care if you ain't
Such a phenomenal little detail that a lot of people didn't even notice. My one tiny complaint with this movie is that there's so much that happens in this movie that a lot of it feels like it happens too fast. I feel like if they had lengthened the runtime by, like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, the pacing would have been that much better. It's not a huge problem, it's just, it bugs me a little bit. I love this movie. It is a borderline masterpiece. My score is 5 out of 5.